Welcome back to Saints Squad. I'm your host, Dylan Sanders of Saints Wire. And oh my God, where did John go?
Russ Jackson, also Locked On Saints podcast. And I'm feeling pretty good about the New Orleans Saints quarterback battle.
This is former Saints wide receiver Lance Moore. And today, my kids are out of school for the summer. Yay.
It's the Saints Squad, sponsored by Gametime. Everything New Orleans Saints, every week. Covering all the big hits and game-changing plays from down in the Big Easy, the way only Locked On Podcast Network can. Get ready and squad up. It's the Saints Squad show, starting now.
Howdy, Internet Nation. Welcome back to the Saints Squad, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thank you for making it your first listen every Monday and Thursday. We have a unique group of experts here ready to bring you a fun and informative show on everything New Orleans Saints. Today, without John, he got bit in the head by a cobra. Happens to the best of us. We're going to be talking to like Erik McCoy season preview. Some more stuff we want to see out of minicamp. Some early defensive takeaways and some early offensive takeaways, kind of how we've been doing with these minicamp OTA episodes. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, customers can get $200 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. That's a lot of money. And maybe you can save it for football season and bet on the New Orleans Saints to win the Super Bowl, because I think we've seen enough. The Saints have a quarterback. Let's really start with the quarterback. Start with Ross.
Yeah.
Has Spencer Rattler looked like the better quarterback so far this early training camp period?
It's interesting. Here's the way that I would explain it. I would explain it that if I had to pick one of these two quarterbacks to march me down a football field, that right now, through OTAs and minicamp, I would pick Spencer Rattler. He is right now the more kind of like meticulous, more kind of process driven, more quick processing, more decisive quarterback at this time. And so that to me, I think has kind of given him a little bit of an edge at this point. As Lance has said, as I have said, as John has said, as you have said, no one's making decisions about the starting quarterback position during OTAs in minicamp, or at least no one should be. If they are, run for the hills. But I will say that I do think that this quarterback battle is where I think it should be right now, and that it's in a promising place, which is that no quarterback has been left in the dust between the two, which I think is a good thing at this point.
Yeah. Lance, what do you think of the early quarterback battle?
Well, I can appreciate the fact that no quarterback has separated himself, right? Like you want it to be competitive. But something that I've been thinking about a lot, especially since we've heard Kellen Moore talk about no 11-on-11 periods, and obviously there's no pads, it's not live. And even in practice, it's never going to be live for a quarterback. But when you're watching these guys on the field, Spencer Rattler looks like the guy that has played already, right? And what I mean by that is he's a guy that knows in the National Football League, and obviously he hasn't played a lot, but he's played enough to know that you can't hold on to the football. So I think I think there will be some separation early on in training camp. Once there's live 11-on-11 action with bodies flying around, there's pressures and all that stuff. I think it's going to be a pretty eye-opening experience for Tyler Shuck. I think that Spencer Rattler, while he's not that much older in NFL years, he's definitely a lot more seasoned and will have a better understanding about timing and not being able to sit back there and pat the ball, not being able to rely on your legs a whole lot. As athletic as Tyler Shuck is, he's not going to be that much more athletic, if athletic, at all more than the defensive front. So I think we will see some separation from them come training camp once they get in these 11-on-11 periods. And not to say that Tyler Shuck is going to be the deer in the headlights, but I wouldn't be surprised if there was some of those moments, because he has yet to see it in any of these off-season practices, right? So it will be a little bit shocking for him once they line up in the first full team huddle with the defense on the other side with their ears pinned back, that's going to be an experience for him that he's never seen before. Like,
Yeah.
Louisville, cool, good school, play in a decent conference, but it's not the NFL. And the moment that he gets in that huddle and realizes after the first time that it happens, oh man, everything happens faster. Like, that's going to be a big time learning experience for him. And I just, not to say that he can't learn quickly and then become the better guy, but I just think that the experience that Spencer Rattler has is paramount in this quarterback battle. And I think we'll see that early on in training camp.
Yeah, I don't think that you're saying Tyler Shuck's going to fail in the face of that.
No.
It's just that, like, that's going to be an eye-opening moment, whether he excels against it or not. It'll be telling.
Well, and that for sure is going to be telling. Like, the coaches are going to, the assessment of him will be able to be a little bit more clear once they get some of those live team reps. Not to say that they're not going to be evaluating Spencer Rattler in the same vein, but it's you're in t-shirts and shorts basically with a helmet on, and there is no pressure. There is no defensive
nothing.
So you can sit back there and pat the football and get a little bit of extra time by rolling to your right or to your left, when in reality, that's not happening too often in the NFL regular season action. So, the jury's still out, but clearly there's going to be another level of learning that's going to come training camp.
I do believe that Tyler Shuck was a guy who had more time in the pocket in college as opposed to like the average college quarterback.
Call. Yeah.
And so it's going to be a real change, because as good as, I think we feel good about the Saints offensive line, it's still an NFL offensive line, and the time is just not going to be at all the same. So with processing speeds being like one of the bigger concerns about him watching his tape, maybe that could be really come back to bite him. But overall, so far, I think that this has been about the best case scenario you would want from this quarterback battle. Spencer Rattler looks like he has been around for another season and played a couple games in the NFL. And that's the reason is because he has.
Right.
But Tyler Shuck come in and fallen apart and looked like the sixth rounder that some people thought that he was whenever they drafted him in the second round.
Yeah, and I'd say that, like, for Spencer Rattler too, not only does he have an extra year of NFL experience, but he took 600 more snaps in college. He threw 300 plus more passes in college. He went against SEC competition. To your points about the competition that Tyler Shuck saw at Louisville, everything like that. And I think all of those things put you in position of a little bit more preparedness. Not because like you are choosing to be more prepared. You just faced things already. You've experienced things already that are more closely familiar to what it is that you're going to see at this, in this 2025 season. And so I think that's the thing. But I would have been a little bit more concerned about things had one of these quarterbacks gotten left in the dust during OTAs or minicamp. You know what I mean? Like that's where I would have been like, oh wow, like one of these investments did not work out. And so for them to still be kind of in conversation with one another, or at least for the differences between them being the finer details, you look at the numbers so far through OTAs and training camp by my eyes, and look for media at practices and things like that. Like our angles aren't always the best and all these other things. So, it is what it is. But both of them have attempted 59 passes. Spencer Rattler's completed 45 of them, 42 were completed for Tyler Shuck. If we were only going by the numbers, we'd say, ooh, this is really close. But when you look at processing speed, decision-making, who's moving off of reads and back to, or even working back to receivers from previous reads and things like that, you're seeing more of that level of the game from Spencer Rattler than you're seeing from Tyler Shuck at the moment, which isn't massively surprising. But the fact that neither of them have been left in the dust at this point, I think it's an alarm I feel like I don't have to sound, that I was kind of wondering if we might have to.
Yeah. I mean, there's a good thing that, we talked about the fact that Spencer Rattler is going to be behind the 8 ball already in this competition, and he can't afford to start out slow, or else Tyler Shuck will zoom by him. So it feels like, is there anything more Spencer Rattler could be doing to at least keep himself squarely in this conversation right now?
I kind of like what he's doing, if I'm being honest.
Yeah.
I mean, he's kind of just playing the game that is taking what the defense gives him. Like, they've been doing situational stuff for the last couple of days. And Lance, I'm sure you could speak to this, but when you're doing the situational things, you're simulating it's not full game, I understand, but you're still simulating the thought process of how you attack a 3rd and 3, which isn't always take a 50-yard shot downfield. Sometimes it's just go and get 5 yards. And so you're seeing him kind of process that part of the game at this point. And I think that him doing that is something that's going to resonate with the coaching staff a little bit.
Definitely. And you as a coach, you want to prepare your players for every situation if you can. Now, obviously, there's certain things that happen in games that you can't necessarily prepare for every single week. But if you break down the game, it's those situational plays a lot of times that end up winning or losing you games, right? Because there's not, especially in the modern NFL, there's not a ton of blowouts, right? So you're talking about mostly 1-score games. And if you are seasoned in those practice situations, then you get into the game and you're like, oh, okay, we've been there. Here's the couple of things that we need to go to make this happen. Here's our plays in this specific scenario or situation. So it's good to see them drilling them. And it also brings out the competitiveness in guys. Okay, this is 3rd and 3. Defense, we got to get off the field. Offense, we got to get 1 first down. Then we can get to our next set of plays. So that is another way of kind of breaking the monotony of the offseason work and giving the guys something more to I guess tap into once you get into the regular season. Okay, we've been there before. We've run this situation a million different times. Now we get in the game and it's easy, right? It's like clockwork. We've done it so many times. We're so good at it now. And like you said, you want to see how both quarterbacks are processing these situations. What guy is stepping up to the challenge in those situations? What guy is kind of looking like a little scary? And to your point, like the fact that the quarterbacks are relatively close to me says that we don't have 2 quarterbacks that suck.
Yeah. Right.
Like, I mean, that could be the case, right? Yeah. Like if we got into this offseason and both guys looked bad, we'd be in for a really, really slow
Kirk Cousins, anybody?
Really, really bad training camp. And then, I'm sure the season wouldn't be much better. But the fact that they're performing relatively well for what they're doing, their completion percentage is pretty high, which it should be. There's no defensive line. There's no pass rush, right? But the jury is obviously still out. We haven't played any games yet, but I think that the competition aspect of it is there. I think it'll continue, and I think it'll bring out the best in both of the guys, and hopefully the best man will win that job and be the guy who starts week 1. I can't speak after that, but if we're going to talk about it being a competition, let's make it a real competition.
Yeah, and iron sharpens iron. It's much better than bronze sharpening bronze.
That's what you have always said that. You've always said that.
I've always said that. But is there, actually, I think we're going to stick here with the offense for a little bit. We're going to jump into our first break, keep with the offense. And when we come back, I want to finish out the offense, talk a little bit more past the quarterbacks, and then get into a couple of defensive things that we want to see change as well. The NBA playoffs are in full swing, and every night delivers highlight-worthy performances, major momentum shifts, and can't-miss moments. Whether it's a game-winning shot or a breakout player, there's never been a better time to get in on the action. Think you know how Game 4 is going to turn out? Can Tyrese Halliburton make the OKC Thunder feel like a New Orleans Saints team in the playoffs again? Well, now's the perfect time to sign up and place your first bet. Head to FanDuel.com and place your first $5 bet. If it wins, you'll get $200 in bonus bets. That's $200 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. FanDuel Sportsbook. I want to jump straight into keep getting back to the offense. And I want to talk a little bit about the wide receivers, because I feel like the Saints have 2 good young wide receivers that are coming off of injury-riddled seasons. And it feels like starting out this year, it hasn't looked like that on the field. I mean, if they both look smooth, Rashid's been winning since day one, and Olave is looking better and better. Lance, I want to talk to you about the mental the mental talent, what it takes to overcome an injury, and what it says that they are looking so good and smooth early on in the year after an injury.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think it's, guys who were injured during the season or late in the season should be back and looking good without, major significant type surgeries. They should have healed up before everything got back started. They should feel good in the ramp up period with the workouts. Like they're exactly where they should be at this point. The guys that have had the more significant injuries are the ones that you really need to worry about. But, just speaking to my experience, the Super Bowl season, I dislocated my shoulder I want to say it was in April, and ended up having surgery and basically missed the entire summer. Come training camp, I was the red jersey guy, started the training camp on PUP, and just trying to get back to practice was like a grind. And while I was feeling normal, like them kind of protecting me from myself, which I feel like all injured players, like you're in a hurry to try to get back on the field. Like it's the competitiveness is one thing, but for guys that are, one, trying to make teams, two, trying to get a contract extension, three, just hoping that they can stick around, you can't do that if you're not on the field. So there is like a annoyance about being hurt. You're in the building all the time. Everybody's asking you when you're coming back. The coaches are kind of looking at you like, the front office people are looking at you like, come on, bro. Like, we need to get you on the field. And of course, if I could take a magic pill and be 100% the next day, I would do it 1,000,000 times out of 1,000,000, but that's just not the reality of injuries. So the getting back to 100% and feeling good is amazing. And it will do wonders for these guys to feel like themselves again and to go through an offseason and be relatively productive, look like and feel like themselves again. They'll go into training camp and hopefully the regular season with all kinds of momentum, all kinds of confidence, and hopefully guys that will be able to take the next step in, the development of their game in a new offense with a potential new quarterback. I mean, that like all things are pointing north for those guys. And I think that they are due for a big step in the next direction. And then obviously you got to factor in Ted Rath, the strength staff. Getting these guys healthy and keeping these guys healthy is going to be the most important thing for them. We know that they're good players. We know that they're ultra productive when they're on the field, but they got to stay on the field. Like this team won't be successful if those two guys are not regularly in the lineup. Which we saw late in last season when, where they were kind of mixing and matching guys to go out there and play wide receiver. I was thinking about coming back out of retirement, but
there was that story that happened last year where like somebody made like a fake press release about the team doing like the open tryouts, whatever. And like people showed up, man. Like people actually showed up. Like that was crazy.
You got to shoot your shot, man. It was probably not real, but if it was real, people were ready,
Right? Yeah. I had a Uber drive. I had like a Uber Eats driver or something like that during the draft. I think I had like ordered food. I had dropped off at the facility, and then they asked me like, "They're gonna do open tryouts again this year?" And I was like, "Bro, they didn't do open tryouts last year. Like, what are you talking?"
I mean, that's how I heard they found Dante Pettis midseason.
No, not Dante Potter. That's what Keith Williams calls it. Keith Williams calls him Dante Potter because, quote, he runs routes like a wizard. So.
Oh, that's awesome. No, but I do remember that. I don't know how, but that signing like just completely snuck under my nose. And the first game he played, I went, Dante Pettis. That's all the auto reaction. That's all I had to say.
He made plays too.
He made plays. He was actually one of the more fun receivers and like players on the team because of his return ability in the second half of last season. Thank you for that, Lance. Let's jump over to the defensive side of the ball. And I want to start with Ross with the talk of the town, the biggest name out there. someone that we love dearly. Oh, Kool-Aid McKinstry.
Yeah, man. Kool-Aid has been. Is that your iPhone? Is that your iPhone? Like your background on your phone?
My iPhone background. It's been there for weeks at this point.
I love it. Yeah, no, it's Kool-Aid McKinstry has been awesome. Like throughout OTAs and throughout minicamp, and he just keeps getting better and better and better. And I think the thing that's really nice about that is that he's going to get even better and better with time. But also when there's a pass rush, to Lance's earlier point too, right? Like that's going to help and create sort of that symbiotic relationship between rush and coverage, which is always a really important pairing in every NFL defense. And so, I mean, just on Wednesday, in particular, the second day of mandatory minicamp yesterday, he had 2 back-to-back pass breakups, one of which could have been an interception when he was matched up with Brandon Cooks, by the way. So you got a second-year corner going up against a very experienced and seasoned wide receiver that's out there as well. And he was able to go out there and make a play that was with Spencer Rattler at quarterback. And then the very next play, Spencer Rattler connected with Cedric Wilson Jr. in the end zone in what would have been Spencer Rattler's 4th touchdown of the day. And Kool-Aid McKinstry kept his composure, went to fight for the football, knocked the football out, and then it ended up being incomplete. And so I highlight that because, you know, for all intents and purposes, if Kool-Aid was less of a competitor, he would have said, you know what, I got my PBU or whatever. He can have his touchdown. But instead, he is a competitor, and he went after the football after what looked like it was going to be a surefire catch, knocked it away, and made another play. He's been excellent throughout OTAs and mandatory minicamp. And that's good because the Saints lost the lockdown number 1 corner in Marshawn Lattimore. They're trying to figure out what they have in that secondary right now. And I think Kool-Aid right now, along with Alontae Taylor, is one of the shortest shots that they have in that position group.
Yeah. And I feel like that is like the perfect player that they needed to break out this year in that cornerback room. Because, you know, we're fans of the Quincy Riley pick, but that's the only big major upgrade that they added. You know, they brought back guys like Yadam, who had a good year 2 years ago, but didn't really do much last year. So there's not a ton of ways that this cornerback room can be made much better without Kool-Aid McKinstry developing. You know, they could go get Jair or Asante, but I think Kool-Aid's development is the biggest and most realistic way for them to really see take a step in the secondary this year. Lance, what do you think about Kool-Aid stuff? Or Ross?
Yeah, well, I mean, look, it's not just Marshawn Lattimore; it's Paulson Adebo as well, right? Like,
of course, right.
We needed to replace productivity. You know, Paulson Adebo was one of the historically great penalizers at defense, but he also would give you 4 or 5 picks a year, right? So, like,
and a lot of disruption at the catch point,
and a lot of disruption at the. I mean, he was a productive corner.
A net positive quarterback.
Yes.
For sure. You had Marshawn on one side, who was most of the time shut down corner. Then you've got Adebo on the other side, who was a big time production corner. So, like, it's not as simple as, hey, we need to find one guy that can play. It's like, nah, we need multiple guys. Right. And we need one of our guys that's coming back to go back to his role where he plays the best. And I feel like Alontae on the inside is where he is most productive. So, like, we need to have 2 new corners that can be productive and or shut down to be able to give this defense a chance, and to see Kool-Aid stepping up and kind of taking that next step for him in his development and you know, the competitiveness. And, you know, he's got a good group of wide receivers to go against, right? Like, it's not like in this division there's going to be a bunch of slouches he's going to face, right? So, like, being able to go against good receivers in practice is going to prepare him for regular season action. And the goal is, if I'm running an organization, whether I'm the head coach or I'm the general manager, for me, a major, like, pillar, I guess you could call it, in the program is going to be ongoing skill development. How are we continuing to develop our players? It's not okay to just say, okay, well, this guy was good last year, he'll be good again this year. Like, that doesn't work. Like, Sean Payton always would say, and I'm sure, Ross, you heard it, like, guys don't stay the same. You're either getting better or you're getting worse, right? Like, you can't stay the same. because while you think you're staying the same, everybody else around you is getting better. So just by nature, you're getting worse because the separation between you is more now. So, it's good to see him taking the next step in this offseason. Now let's see him put it together in training camp, in the pads, in full team action, in the one-on-ones, right? Like, which is going to get big time competitive. Like, yes, he's looking the part today. That's what we want to see. We want to see him continue to progress and keep getting better and better. And, and it's not just the cornerback position, clearly, with that ongoing skill development thing like that. That should be a motto for the team, right? This is our team. How are we getting them better? And then how are we quantifying how these guys are getting better? What is it that you see day in and day out that shows you that, hey, this guy is better than he was 2 weeks ago, right?
Yeah.
Like that needs to be constantly reevaluated. Or else what are the coaches doing? You know what I mean? Like it's their job to develop and bring these guys along. And it's not just the position coaches, right? It's the offensive coordinators, it's the run and pass game coordinators, the defensive coordinator. I mean, it's a collective effort, but these guys can't just say, okay, we've got this guy, he's a good player, he'll be good for us for the long haul. Like, no. We got to put the time in, put the work in to continue to get better, because everybody else is going to continue to get better.
Yeah. I want to say real quick to a couple of things. Quincy Riley did participate in 9-on-7s for the first time so far this offseason. So more progress for him. And the other reason why I think that Kool-Aid has the ability to do exactly what you're talking about, Lance, is because of Brandon Staley's system. It's going to be real similar to what he did at Alabama, sort of that pattern match. No, zone match. Sorry. So that zone match, well, pattern matching, but zone match kind of defensive coverage. And so two things that does is that it puts him in a comfortable place because he knows that language, or maybe not the language, but he knows what that scheme and how to operate that scheme, a version of it under Saban. And then the other piece to it is it allows these DBs to have their eyes on the quarterback a little bit more. You're a press man, with Dennis Allen and all this. So it was a lot of turning their back to the quarterbacks. People were wondering why the mobile quarterbacks are giving them such trouble. Well, I mean, that happens when all your coverage guys have their backs turned to the quarterback. So it allows them to be able to kind of help out there, but then also be able to read the eyes of the quarterback and then go out there and try to make plays. I've talked to several defensive players in the locker room that have highlighted that as one of the biggest things that they're most excited about in terms of the changes, is their ability now to where they feel like a greater freedom and ability to go out there and make plays because they have their eyes back on the quarterback a little bit more, or not a little bit more, but more than what they did in the previous system.
Ross, I wanted to ask you real quick, because I feel like we get a lot of defensive takeaways from a lot of offensive takeaways from minicamp, and I think I've seen the question be raised before. Does that mean that the defense is doing something wrong in training camp?
Oh, yeah, good question.
So I wanted to ask, clear the air. Is that valid? What should people take away from it?
I personally am not super concerned about it. Now, if and I'll explain why, but I will say if the quarterbacks were still completing like 90% of their passes like they did during OTAs, then yeah, okay, maybe we would have a little bit of a conversation there. But these guys are hovering around like 71% for Tyler Shuck, 76% for Spencer Rattler, based on what we've seen, right? There was 6 other OTA practices that none of us got to see. So who knows? And so I do want to highlight that part too. But for me, like, there's no pass rush. I'm going to continue to drive that home. There's not even an offensive line to try to see over. You know what I mean? Like, there's so much different when you have every throwing lane available to you. And I don't think people pay attention to throwing lanes enough, that like if one defender gets their body in a throwing lane, it changes the entire trajectory of what a potential throw might look like for a quarterback. A quarterback can't make that throw if that lane's not there. And so when you have just one big old lane, I almost used a different word there, but one big old lane available to you, yeah, you're probably going to complete 70-something% of your passes. The other piece to it is that when there's no pass rush, sometimes these wide receivers are getting to run second routes. And what I mean by second routes is they run their initial route, the quarterback scrambles, they run another route to match either the pattern of what it is that they're supposed to be doing in their scramble drill, which is another valuable thing to continue to work on. And it's hard to cover a second route. It's even harder to cover a second route when every throwing lane's available and there's nobody getting in the way of where the quarterback is going. So no, I'm not super concerned about it. I think it would be different if we were watching these, wide receivers win every contested pass or creating 6 yards of separation on average when they're targeted and things like that. I don't think we're seeing that. And so I wouldn't be pushing the panic button on that yet. If this persists into training camp, where there are some of those other elements, throwing lanes are taken away, there is a quote unquote pass rush in that situation, then maybe I would revisit that. But right now, I'm not super concerned about it.
Like the offense is the plays that are made on offense, especially like the bombs away plays, are just sexier. So they're going to get more attention. They're going to get more attention. They're going to get more videos on the Saints IG. It's going to get more journalists and analysts talking about Rashid Shaheed looks like him old self, Chris Olave over the top. Like, yeah, I mean, and they want to see these quarterbacks chuck the ball down the field. And that's just the nature of people's interest and wanting to talk about people or teams scoring points. It's not as sexy to say, you know what, Kool-Aid had 6 PBUs in OTAs, right? Like it's not as sexy, even though it's just as important.
That's pretty sexy.
Like,
that's pretty sexy.
It is.
But to us,
not as sexy as a guy crossing that goal line. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Hey, yo, myself. But anyway.
Hey, yo.
But you guys get what I'm saying. You know.
Yeah. And I will add to that real quick too, that like some of this is like, okay, yeah, they've completed 42. Like, let's say somebody completed 42 of 59 passes. Not all those are going to wide receivers either. Some of those are check downs into the flat because that's what the game situation that they're practicing calls upon. So like, that's the other thing to kind of keep in mind with all this too.
Yeah.
All right. Well, Ross, thank you for giving me a better spot to throw it to a break to. And we're going to come back and talk about what we want to see from training camp. Is the New Orleans Saints offseason schedule too confusing for you to figure out? Like, when's training camp? When's minicamp? Why are retirements in June? Well, you can organize it all with today's sponsor, the Skylight Calendar. This sleek digital display syncs with your existing calendars and making it simple to track appointments, practices, dinners, and reminders all in one easy-to-see place. Right now, Skylight is offering our listeners $30 off their 15-inch calendars by going to skylightcal.com/NFL. That is SKYLIGHTCAL.com/NFL for $30 off your first 15-inch calendar. We've talked about what we have seen from camp so far. Let's talk a little bit about what we aren't seeing and why we're not seeing it. I think the big thing is that there's not been any 11 on 11 yet so far. Lance, why? What are we missing without doing it? Stuff like that. Yeah.
Just why?
What does it say? Just why? Why?
Look, to me, while we would all love to see what the full team looks like on the field, we'd love to see them going, head to head in drill work. This to me is a big picture thing. It's sure we want to see guys healthy going into training camp, but this also tells me that Kellen Moore is conscious of protecting the guys wherever he can do it. And he understands that the health of this team is going to be the most important part about being able to get, well, first, an evaluation on guys. And then secondarily, getting these guys to stadiums. Like Mike Tomlin was big on that. Like, we got to get these guys into the stadium. We got to get them into the stadium. Well, what does that mean? We got to get guys healthy into the stadium. And if you're going crazy in off season, you get little nicks and injuries that maybe you wouldn't have gotten if you kind of pull back on some of that stuff. And the reality is it's probably, taking a step back, it's probably a little bit more dangerous to do live 11 on 11 drills without pads, right? That's because it's more of a controlled go hard session than it would be if you had the pads on when you could just go get it. You know what I mean? Like this is this is that's two. 3 strikes and I'm out. But it to me it really he's a former player, right? So he understands.
Right. Yep.
I don't want to run these guys into the ground. I don't want to put them into unnecessary danger if I don't have to. Like, we need these guys to be healthy going into training camp. That's the most important thing. And if eliminating 11-on-11 periods is the way to get that done, which it seems like it has been so far, then I'm all for it. Like, the everything changes during training camp anyway. And I'm sure as they have their first couple of practices with no pads, which I believe they still do, maybe, they're not gonna, they maybe they start to slowly integrate the 11-on-11 periods in, but the reality is you can't get a full read on what guys can or can't do with no pads anyway. Like, it's good from an assignment standpoint. Like, okay, let me see if these guys know what to do. But from the physical standpoint, I mean, it almost seems like he's kind of forward thinking in that, not to say that he's probably, I would imagine he's not the only coach that's doing it that way, but from what I've heard, there aren't too many. So kudos to him for kind of making that his thing and saying, look, man, these practices are important, but it only gets more important after this. And we're going to do whatever it takes to make sure that the guys that we have healthy, stay healthy, and the guys that we are trying to get back, we can get back sooner to put into the fold once training camp comes around.
Yeah. Ross, anything to add to that?
Yeah, I just wanted to Kellen Moore's quote on this. Part of it is the way that OTAs are structured. Obviously, we're trying to limit physicality and put these guys in a really great position to be ready and rock and roll for training camp. That's literally everything that Lance was just talking about. He basically looked at,
and I didn't even see that quote.
You didn't even see the quote. That's why I was like, oh, I got to make sure I got to shout this out, because this is literally like verbatim exactly what you're talking about. And then he also said that this is really a building block for us so that we can just keep growing as we get into training camp. Literally, like what Lance just told you is exactly the way that Kellen Moore is thinking. And shocker, that's why Lance does the show. That's why Lance speaks on these things before any of us do. Everything like that, like it's exactly what it is to look for. And in fact, actually, Spencer Rattler talked about it a little bit too. And then I think he said something, I'm going to paraphrase a little bit, but he said something like, we were doing 11-on-11s at this point in the year last year, and people were dropping like flies or something like that. Like, he did not pull punches on it. But like, you got to imagine, like, look at where the Saints had the majority of their injuries last year. Like, their costliest injury outside of the quarterback position was their entire interior offensive line multiple times over, right? Think about who maybe gets the brunt of that force when we're talking about trying to do 11-on-11s without pads or doing them with pads, all these other things. It's kind of that offensive line, or that the trenches, I would say, right? Those micro hits to the head and all those other things, the bumps, the bruises, all that stuff, those little tweaks that end up weakening you just that little bit more than you would have been had you not done that. When you end up having the injury at a later point, you have to imagine that all of that is kind of in consideration in terms of also trying to help keep specifically the trenches healthy on both sides of the football, but specifically that offensive line, because without that offensive line, nothing else works. And so I feel like some of this too is like a concerted effort, not just to keep and limit physicality and keep everybody safe. Like Jonas Sanker was out on Wednesday because he's dealing with like a small injury. So you're not going to keep everybody completely clean, but the places where you have a lot of value and where you have a lot of contact and physicality is that offensive line. And I don't think the Saints want to see their offensive line hurt like it was last year or the year before.
All right. I want to jump into something else that I think that at least maybe we can shout out some other things we want to see that we've been missing out on so far in training camp, mini camp, OTAs. And I want to start with the spot where I truly think the more we look at it, the more it feels like there is a chance to have like an upset in terms of a role this year. And that's in the linebacker room. I want to go off ball. We feel like DeMario is safe, but I just feel like there is room for Pete Werner to like need to show something in this new defense to for sure be that second guy. I want to see more out of the off ball linebacker room as we expect. Because I've talked about what I think Snefi Sewell can do. Danny Stutzman, the stud, the crack with the juice has been great so far, and communion. And I want to see. I feel like I want to see more from Pete Werner and more from these linebackers.
Yeah, I think I would agree with that. I don't know. I've written down Pete Werner's number a few times, but it's mostly been because he was like the closest defender on a catch or an incompletion, but I haven't written him down for like a PBU or like making, a play. Now we haven't gotten to see anything run oriented, so we haven't been able to see the thing that he does really well, which is run fit and play, read play flow, diagnose, reading reactor, click and close kind of stuff. Like that's kind of his game at this point. Everything like that, not necessarily the coverage guy. But what if you can get that guy that can do all those things, but also be the coverage guy? And that's where Danny Stutzman becomes really, really interesting, right? Because he can kind of do all these different things. DeFi Sewell, a former safety, like all these other pieces. And so I think the best thing that I could say is I agree with you in that, but I don't know that we really get a real feel for the entirety of what the linebacker room can do, even off ball. Until we get into training camp. So it's going to be interesting to see. I mean, you got one more practice today and then training camp's next. And so maybe we get that opportunity there, but definitely something that I'm really looking forward to seeing more of too. I would have to agree with that.
Well, and I agree. I mean, I think he's left there, a little something extra to be desired for. Like he's a guy that has shown flashes for sure. He's made some plays, but not necessarily a guy that's been extraordinarily consistent, that has been able to stay on the field consistently. He's dealt with a ton of different injuries in his early career. He got a contract extension. So it's not like he's a guy that's not going to be around, right? He's going to be around. There's going to be a role for him. But I agree with you, Dylan. Like I think he's going to have to be one of those guys that has to take the next step in his development and then showing some consistency to be a guy that can stay in there, because there will be some guys behind him that I think have some ability that, but that's how it should be, right? Like if you're a guy that's been around for a long time and you've been okay, is okay good enough? Right? Like, at some point, okay can't be good enough, and you've got to give somebody else an opportunity to show if he's better than okay, right? Like okay doesn't win games for you. Okay definitely doesn't win division titles, and okay isn't going to win you a Super Bowl. So like I would say he's been good at times, but overall I'd say he's been okay. How long is okay going to be good enough? And I think, in this new defense, there's going to be opportunity, but he's got to go get it. Like, I like the guy. Smart guy. Seems to be, really good, down to earth. Definitely capable of making plays. He's an OSU guy, so obviously I got love for him. I'm a Columbus kid, but I just, there's definitely potential for him to take the next step and become one of those guys, especially with DeMario going into, what is he, year 14 now? 13, 14, right? Like, so at some point, DeMario's not going to be here anymore. And that's not to say that Pete needs to go over and play the Mike position, but somebody's going to have to take over in that linebacker room, and it could very well be him.
Yeah, I just feel like.
Oh, good.
I was going to say, I feel like we've been waiting for a while to see that next step taken from Pete.
Right.
Like I feel like he came out of the gate strong, and we were like, wow, this really young, exciting linebacker, and then it's kind of plateaued since then.
Yeah, he came into the league as a jack of all trades, master of none, and I'd still consider him a jack of all trades, a master of none, right? Like it goes along with what Lance was just talking about in terms of what's your development plan? Where are you getting better? How are you getting better? Or are you just staying the same? And so I think that's it. That makes it all a worthy question to ask. I'm so excited to see that position at training camp. It's a great call out, Dylan.
Yeah. Is there anything else from training camp that we want to give a quick shout out to before we move on to our last little bit?
I mean, it's one of the positions that we haven't talked about, but I'll add in safety real quick, just because like I'm curious to see what the rotation is going to look like, right? Like Tyrann Mathieu, we asked Kellen Moore Tuesday if Tyrann Mathieu was limited because it didn't seem like he was doing a lot when he was out there, and Kellen Moore said no. Now, my expectation is they know who Tyrann Mathieu is. There's very little to learn about Tyrann Mathieu and everything like that. But I do think that it like does bring up the question, okay, so what does this team do if they don't have Tyrann Mathieu because he's got to go off the field and tie his shoe, or something like that. You know what I mean? Like it makes you think like, okay, so what are the other pairings that you can find outside of Tyrann Mathieu? 3 OTA practices and 3 mandatory minicamp practices are not enough time to see like, oh, okay, otherwise like throughout a training camp, I could track, like we've seen this pairing of safeties this many times. And then with that, we saw these results. We can't do that right now. So in training camp, I'm excited to see that because I want to see what happens when we see those different safety pairings, when Tyrann Mathieu's not involved and when Tyrann Mathieu is involved, just to kind of see like what's going to be that second pairing, that third pairing, like whatever's going to be necessary at the position.
I think it's you got to be careful trying to make a judgment based on what you see in practice. If my experience tells me anything, when I was with the Steelers in 2014, Troy Polamalu was obviously still Troy, but he was going into year 12. And I was always kind of confused, like, why is he practicing? Right? Like there was just a lot, there was just a lot of time that he did not practice, right? And then the times that he did practice, it wasn't like he was always out there taking reps. He'd get a couple reps, then he'd get the heck out of there. Because at that point, it was like, okay, again, we got to get this guy into the stadium. We don't need this guy getting a million reps in practice and hurting himself. Like, so. And
I think Troy P knows what he's going to do.
For sure.
Yeah, but I feel the same way about Tyrann. Yeah.
Same thing. Yeah. Like, he's been in the league long enough. He doesn't need to be practicing 100 reps every practice to know what he's doing. He's smart enough. He I'm sure he understands the defense already. So like, it's sure you want to look out there. Okay, these are the guys. This is the rotation. So you have a little bit of ammo when we talk, but you don't really know until you get into the games. And then you say, okay, well, this is what they look like. This was the rotation in the games. I think practice sometimes can be fool's gold a little bit and make you think something, and then it could be something completely different.
Yeah, true.
Man, I was looking through the 2014 Steelers roster, and I just want to give a quick shout out to my guy Darius Hayward Bay. What a guy! What a guy! Yeah,
good guy, great guy.
And my favorite Madden card of all time was a silver Dree Archer, and so he was
shout
just
out
fastest man in the league right there.
There you go. All right. Well, when we come back, we're going to wrap it up, and we're going to continue our player spotlights, and we're going to go with someone that proved just how important he is by not playing last year. Wrapping it up there, I want to continue our player spotlight series and jumping back to the offensive side of the ball. And today, I wanted to go over Erik McCoy. I think a very important piece of this team, and we all knew he was good. We all knew he was one of the best centers in the league, but I feel like we've got a real look at just how important it is to have him there whenever he was gone for most of last season. So I want to talk about him going into this season. Let's start off with Ross. What do you want to see from him, and what is the ceiling of this offensive line with Erik McCoy anchoring it down in the middle?
Its best version of itself, whatever that is in terms of what it ranks across the NFL, I don't know. But its best version, the New Orleans Saints' best version of their offensive line, only happens when Erik McCoy is on the field. That's just the way that maybe I'm wrong, but that's my opinion. Erik McCoy to me is the glue guy. He's the guy that makes it all work. He's the guy that's going to help the young quarterbacks, right? Like, so much of this offense is going to be about mic identification, and you're going to have young quarterbacks there. So you want to have somebody that's going to have their backs to make sure that the right call is being made, the right adjustments are being made, the right checks are being made, things like that. Like, there's a big role in those things that he ends up playing, particularly with IDs. And so I think he's massively important. He was the pinnacle last year of you don't know what you got till it's gone. You don't talk about the center position when he is on the field. You can't not talk about it when he's not on the field. And so I think that with the addition of Will Clapp, they're in a better place depth-wise than they were last year with sort of the rotating door and the go get Connor McGovern and play him that week and all those other things, types of situations they were in last year. But I think that like the best version of whatever the New Orleans Saints offensive line looks like only happens with Erik McCoy in the building, or Erik McCoy healthy and on the field rather.
Yeah. Lance, what do you think?
I think last year proved that he's the most important person on this offense. right? Like he might not be the most valuable player on this offense. I think that's still AK. I just feel like what he does and what he's capable of doing makes him the most valuable piece on this offense. But even AK can't do all the things that AK does when Erik McCoy's not around, right? And it wasn't just like the pass protection wasn't great without Erik McCoy. Like the run game wasn't the same without Erik McCoy. Having the shuffle guys and move guys to different positions is a domino effect because of Erik McCoy's injury. And being able to have a guy that is all pro caliber in the fold makes everybody on your offense better, right? Like, and you know, like you hinted at, like the offense or the quarterbacks in specific are going to have to be big time identifiers up front to be able to get the offense in correct plays. Having a veteran center that is super duper smart and has the ability physically to be able to do whatever you ask of him is going to be a huge benefit for either of those quarterbacks. Whoever plays quarterback, having that guy up front. Some places I've been, the center is the guy that's calling the point for the offensive line. In other places, it's the quarterback. And it could very well be Erik McCoy because of the youth at quarterback. But, you know, I'm not in those meeting rooms, so I don't know who that is. But generally, what that means for people who don't know what that means is the defense is going to line up in whatever defense they line up in. It's not as simple as, hey, this is a 4-3 defense. They're going to line up in a 4-3 every time. That's not how it works in the NFL, right? And they have different personnel groupings, and the protections or the running scheme is predicated on how the defense lines up. It's not, hey, we called our play, we run it, the defense has to adjust to us. Like, no, there's adjustments going on both sides of the ball. And if your defense lines up differently, we've got to be able to identify that defense to know how we're supposed to run the play that was called in the huddle. So if you've got a center that's one of the best in the game that's able to identify any defense out there, and more specifically where the point of attack is going to be, then that's going to benefit everybody. And that's not to say that the guys that played last year weren't capable, that Cesar Ruiz couldn't handle that part of the deal, but Erik McCoy is that guy. And it's I'm super happy to see him back and to see him healthy. And I think that having him back is going to make everybody up front better, and overall make the offense better, having him back. Healthy.
It's going to help the rushing offense a lot. I mean, like, this team's going through a pretty big transition. Like, the offensive transition, particularly protections wise, from a wide zone offense, which is a lot of slide protections and things like that, and like Clint Kubiak's approach, which is the Shanahan-Kubiak tree approach of the wide zone offense, requires post-snap rules. So if this DB does this, or if this defensive end, more appropriately actually, does this, then we have to respond after the snap and do this, this, and this. And everybody's got to understand the same rule. The way that they're going to kind of do things this year, if they're, as they're switching away from that, is that they're not going with those slide protections anymore, that everything's off of tracking the mic. And so everybody knows what they're doing before the snap now. And so everything that happens pre-snap becomes incredibly important again. And I say again because, and I've heard players that have been here within like the 2017 on moment of, or era of New Orleans Saints football, that they've described it as being closer to things that they did before. Lance, I don't know if that sounds like what y'all did or not, but like it was a lot of, hey, what happens pre-snap? We all know what we're going to do. Let's go out there and execute it, as opposed to, oh, this guy just flew by unblocked. Now that means I have to do this, blah, blah, like thinking in the moment post-snap like they were doing last year.
Yeah, I mean, I think it sounds similar, but there's always going to be those times where you're just going to have to react. Like, you got to just go out 100%. There and be a football player. And because they're not, based on how they line up, doesn't always tell you exactly what they're going to be doing. Right.
Yeah. You can still ID wrong.
For sure. But also part of being a good defense is being able to disguise what you're trying to do, so that you can throw off the reads, the timing, and all that stuff that the offense is relying on to be successful. But yes, I think it in the scheme that Kellen is bringing, it seems to be a lot less thinking. And if there is a lot less thinking, then that generally means that guys will be able to play faster. And if you can play faster, then that's exactly what you want as an offense that is fast, that is efficient, and can continue to go at you with pace. So yeah, I mean, I think it's a good thing.
Yeah. You mentioned the word react. One of the players that I talked to told me that it puts them in position to react instead of remember. And that was a big thing last year. They had to remember what the rule was. Oh, if this happens, then we have to do this, blah, blah, blah. Now they're in a better position to react. They'd rather react than remember. And I think that sounds familiar.
Mm-hmm. Every time I hear a player or someone talk about what a player thinks about like doing stuff in the middle of a game, I remember why I don't even play Madden anymore, because I would get frustrated at having to do everything. I'm like, you're telling me I have to like adjust the offensive line before the snap? Just let me press X. So I think we know.
Dylan wants Tecmo Bowl back is what he wants.
Dude, are you kidding me? Yes.
There's so much that goes on that goes unnoticed on every single play. It's not like, if the defense, if this guy happens to do this, that he's only done, one rep out of 600 reps this season, then you have to do this. But there's tons of things that happen that guys are having to make this split-second decision. And it's not necessarily like adjusting a route or I've got to, instead of blocking this guy, I got to go block this guy. But it's just, how do they move? Where do they line up? What is their intent? What are these guys doing back here? Like, there's a whole lot of stuff that goes on that the normal person just watching at home on TV would never, ever understand or even think is going on. There's so many little tiny games within the game that happen on every single snap that it's like, if it was broken down from like every single individual player's perspective on every play, people will be blown away. Because it's not, it seems archaic and cavemanish. Oh, let's advance the ball down the field and score touchdown. Defense, let's stop them from scoring touchdowns. But it's really an intelligent game. Like, there is a lot of chess, type I guess action, I guess you could call it. It's going on with the coordinators, with the players on the field. I mean, there's a lot more that goes into it than the meatheads, dude, running into each other out there.
I will physically fight over the idea that, athletes aren't smart. I will go to war on that, man. Cause like, that is like just getting to know you, getting to know these players, talking to them in the locker room, coaches and everything like that. Like, these are some of the brightest people I've ever talked to. And so like, I hate when I hear, people that not what you were just saying, but when people genuinely say stuff like, oh, they're meatheads or whatever, like that couldn't be further from the truth, man. Couldn't be further from the truth.
I had a class with Garrett Nussmeier at LSU, and he made a whole presentation about why the earth is not flat, and it made me respect him.
There you go.
He was at practice on Tuesday, by the way. He was at practice on Tuesday.
Oh, man.
It means nothing or it means everything. I don't know.
Probably it means breaking news. I'm going to put Ross's face. Breaking news. Ross Jackson says the Saints are drafting Garrett Nussmeier.
No, I said he was already at the facility. I think they already drafted him.
They signed him? Oh,
wow. Okay. I think it's a done.
Right,
or his dad is the offensive.
His dad just
or his dad
works there. It's one of the two. It's one.
Bring your son to work day.
Oh man. Well, next week will be Bring Your Ears to the Saints Squad Day. On Thursday. Oh no, on Monday. Thank you for listening to the Saints Squad. Check out me, Ross Lance, and even John Hendricks on his socials for the latest. I will be right back here on Monday to talk about probably more training camp, if I'm being honest.